dampers. It basically works like water in a bucket. When this building sways in one direction, 160,000 gallons of water in 12 tanks at the top of the building sloshes in the opposite direction to correct for the sway. It's basically like this giant water shock absorber. The inertia creates a balancing liquid force that's able to dampen the oscillation and bring that building back to rest more quickly, reducing sway and reducing your nausea. So those are inertial slosh dampers. The next up on your left is another beautiful glass building called the Bank of America building, named after its largest tenant, the Bank of America. Now, people often ask me, how long does it take to build one of these enormous skyscrapers, and how much does it cost? Well, in this case, it took just 3 years, to put up that enormous skyscraper, and that is pretty typical. And it cost about $800 million in construction costs. Now, they also had to create that river walk, and they did so using these huge tripod legs that are literally vaulting the building in midair. Those are huge steel I-beams that are taking on tons and tons of weight to suspend that third floor above the river. Just an amazing feat of modern engineering. But we're going to jump into our time machine, because these next 5 buildings coming up on your right were all built in chronological order, and they really demonstrate the evolution of architecture, not only here in Chicago, but across the United States. So first up, you've got 2 Riverside Plaza, 2 Riverside, another example of the Art Deco style. You see those deep inset windows, those streamlined vertical lines, that Indiana limestone color, again, think the roaring 20s. But what happened in 1929? The stock market. It crashed, and we entered the Great Depression. And there was a virtual freeze on the building of office buildings from 1932 to 1957. That's about 25 years of no building in Chicago. But when we reboot architecture in the late 50s and 60s, we jump right into Black Box Modernism, which you can see over there on the right in Gateway Centers 1 and 2. Black Box Modernism. Form follows the function of the building. The father of this style of architecture was a man named Mies van der Rohe. Mies van der Rohe was a very famous architect who made his career right here in Chicago. And he famously said that less is more. Less is more. That was his quote. So I think there is an elegant simplicity to this black box. It is dark, it is stark, it is cheap, and easy to make. These buildings, they are more functionally beautiful instead of being all that aesthetically beautiful, right? And their design exposes the skeleton of the building and its purpose, which is just to be an office building, nothing more. But why build like that, right? How do we go from the ornate decadence of Art Deco in the 20s and 30s to just building squares on squares in the 50s and 60s? Well, you have to understand that this was the post-World War II generation. This was the post-Great Depression generation. These people were naturally thrifty, and they didn't want to waste paper. Oh man, people love to wait in boats. I don't know if you've noticed this, but I certainly have. So there are over 60 black box modernist buildings that look exactly like this one, and you will start noticing them all over the place in Chicago. But jumping ahead into the groovy 1970s with the international style of Gateway Center 3. So in the 70s, as you can tell, we're still building all these boxes, right? But now they can have a little bit more style, more flair in the form of precast concrete or stone cladding. And they can even be gas white. How exciting, a whole new color. There's these architects to be playing around with. And we call this the international style because you can see a building like that being built anywhere in the world in the 1970s, maybe even in your hometowns. I highly recommend going back to your hometowns, the cities near where you live, and seeing if you can see these architectural trends at play, because I guarantee you, you will see very, very similar things. But we're going to move ahead to the 1980s with Gateway Center 4, that curvy glass building there. So in the 80s, architects are tired of the boxes. They're tired of all this square thinking. They think modernism, meh, boring. They want something bolder, something fresher, something with style again. Thus, contextualism is born. You'll notice that this curve in the building is mimicking the upcoming curve in the river. And that blue, that greenish color of the glass is matching the color of the river at this particular spot. So again, contextualism, all about blending it with your surroundings, but also all about glass. Glass was a new material for architects to be playing with. on your left is a building that we never used to talk about on our tours, and that made the owners kind of mad. So they spent over $800,000 to literally put themselves on the map. This is a giant "You Are Here" map of the Chicago River. And that little red Lego piece up there, that represents this building here on the Chicago River. You can even see our lovely grid system depicted on this map. So, you know, if you're ever lost in downtown Chicago and you dropped your phone in the river, you can just look up at that building and know exactly where to go, right? But next up on your right is another enormous Art Deco building that you might recognize if you are a Batman fan. Because this is where Heath Ledger's Joker robbed a Gotham City bank in the 2008 film, The Dark Knight. If you remember the movie, the Joker, he drives this school bus full of cash straight out of this building. One of many films that have filmed here in Chicago. We have a budding film industry continually evolving. However, this building used to be the old Maine Post Office. That's right. This was once an enormous post office, the largest post office in the world at one point. Now you might be asking yourselves, why do we need such a big post office? Well, way before Amazon, way before the internet, Chicago was actually the mail order catalog capital of the world. We had the likes of Sears department store here, and so we actually needed such a big post office to handle all the incoming and outgoing mail. But nowadays, that is no longer a post office there. They have renovated it into office space. It hosts Uber, Walgreens, Home Chef, PepsiCo, just to name a few companies that have space in that enormous Art Deco building. You would eventually reach, through a number of rivers, the Mississippi River. And then you could ride that Mississippi River all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. We will not be doing that tonight, but we could. But we have reached the storytelling portion of the tour. Remember I told you at the beginning that Chicago's story is one of resiliency, of tenacity in the face of problems or challenges. Well, I just want you just to keep that in your minds as you listen to these next couple of stories. So here's the first story. The Great Chicago Fire, 1871. Maybe some of you have heard about this fire before. It's pretty famous as far as fires go. Well, in talking about it, we need to first separate the facts from the fiction. So let us start with the fiction. This is the not true story. This is the legend, if you will. It goes like this. In 1871, a cow in Mrs. O'Leary's barn